I'm Michelle Ferguson. Thank you for tuning in today. Today's podcast, I wanted to talk about God, do you care? And the passage I really wanted to use is Mark chapter 4. And here you have Jesus and his disciples. They're getting onto a ship and they're getting ready to face a great storm. Verse 35, and the same day when the even was come, Jesus, he saith unto them, let us pass over unto the other side. Now, the thing I wanted to point out here was it is not coincidental that Jesus actually said, let us pass over onto the other side. I believe Jesus strategically said those words loud enough for everybody who is going to be on the journey and the voyage to hear those words. Why? Because he understands there's power in what it is that you say. But of course, in verse 37, and there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And he, Jesus, was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. How can you sleep through this? And they woke him up and they said, Master, do you care that we're going to die? And he arose and he rebuked the wind, and he said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are you so afraid? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? So here you have, again, Jesus has already put out here and said, let us pass over onto the other side. And of course, just like real life today, a storm shows up. You know, have you ever just noticed that it seems like when you do make your mind up about something that you're going to do, that's when things try and go wrong? Because this is how Satan attacks. He's always looking for an opportunity to try and get you to stop yourself. I want you to notice here is that in verse 37, that the Bible says that the waves beat into the ship and that it was now full. And I had to think about that. I'm like, wait a minute. If a ship is already full with the waves, not filling, but full, shouldn't that ship be underwater? I mean, a sinking ship is a ship that is filling with water, but a sunk ship is one that's full of water. So even in the middle of their drama, even in the middle of this storm, they were still being sustained in a miracle. There had already been so many things that happened to them that should have finished them. And how many of us can say that if you look back over your life, how many things should have taken you out? There are so many people that are watching this podcast right now that if we were to hear your story, hear your testimony, we'd be amazed of all that God brought you through, that you're even still here. I know there have been things in my life that should have killed me a long time ago, but God saw fit to still have me here. Well, likewise, you have to ask yourself the question, how is it that these guys are even able to function in a full ship? Because the word that Jesus had put out, let us pass over unto the other side, was enough. It put into motion everything that needed to happen for them to get to the other side. But then if you look at verse 38, Jesus was asleep on a pillow. Now let's just think about that. If you're trying to wake someone up, what do you normally do if they're not waking up by you pushing them or calling their name? You pour water on them. That wakes people up. Well, Jesus is in the back of the ship and the ship is full. Why didn't the water wake him up? I mean, water goes where it is allowed to go, in any crevice, in any area. What was so different about Jesus versus these people? Jesus, who's sleeping, getting rest, while everything else around him, he's surrounded by what? Death itself, trying to take him down. And yet he was sleeping through it. So I have to say that if I was in this situation, I might be one of those people that's kind of saying to Jesus, do you even care? How can you sleep at a time like this? Why aren't you up comforting us? Why aren't you up doing something? Because Jesus knew something everybody else had forgotten. That the fact that he put the word out there, that they were guaranteed to get to the other side. Sometimes you just got to ignore the devil. Sometimes we just give him too much time, give him too much credibility. We stand on the edge of the boat and we monitor how hard the wind is blowing. I can't believe that this wind is blowing this hard. We look around and we want somebody to be there to pat us on the back, and we can get upset about that. Or sometimes if you ever just been in a situation where you're just mad that you're even having to go through this at all. I went through that several times in my life where I'm like, God, I'm living for you. I would hope at some point some of this foolishness would stop. Well, of course, when they woke Jesus up, he speaks to the wind, he speaks to the wave, and it ceases. And the most interesting thing is that their response to that was, what kind of man is this, that even the wind and the waves obey him? And the answer to that question is found in Jesus' response when he said, why are you so afraid? Where is your faith? Your faith? What? The type of man that it took to speak to the wind or the wave was the type of man anybody on that boat had the opportunity to become, because Jesus had already put the word of the Lord out there. And so anybody who would take hold of that and enter into rest about it could have spoke to that wind and that wave, not even had to bother Jesus. This is something I had to learn in my own life. When I was 28 years old, I started to get bruises on my body, and I had no idea where they were coming from. And I went to several doctors, and some of them were like, oh, it's a rash, or take this medicine, or do this over here. Or, there were some doctors who, were very dismissive. I went through lots of tests, and it even got to the place where the bruising had spread so much on my limbs, particularly my arms and my legs, that there were some people who were very concerned about me, thinking that I was in some sort of abusive relationship or something along those lines, because they're like, what's happening? Who's doing this to you? And are you just protecting someone else? Well, eventually, when I got diagnosed, I was 28 years old, and I got diagnosed with a type of lymphoma that affects the skin and causes discoloration and blah, 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 blah. And let me tell you, I've had the privilege and opportunity to grow up in the Word. In fact, I had 10 years before I got that diagnosis, had gone to Rhema Bible Training Center and sat through one of the best classes I thought there called Christ the Healer, and read this book by F.F. Bosworth, Christ the Healer. And I had revelation on healing and that God wants me healed, and God sent his son Jesus to pay that price. But it was something about sitting in a doctor's office, vulnerable, by myself, hearing them say those words to me, where the storm just felt like I was drowning. I felt like I was drowning. The first thing that came to my mind was not a Bible verse. In fact, I was really taken back by even the doctors, because they were so nonchalant about it. In fact, the guy came in, he grabbed a box of tissue, like, here we go, another one's going to be crying. Like they were telling me I had a cold or I had bronchitis. And just like these people, I felt every wind. I felt every wave. I felt everything. I had questions. God, do you care? I'm single. I believe in God to be married. I'm single at the time. And I'm like, who's going to want to marry me now with this diagnosis? I had yet to get life insurance. I'm like, what's going to happen with that? How much is this treatment going to cost? What's going to happen to my hair? Am I going to be able to work? I live by myself. I paid my own bills. Who's going to do that? What's going to happen in the middle of the night if I'm having some problems? And I had a season of that where I was just like these people on the boat, failed to recognize that the word was already put out for me to get to the other side. And I was stressed and I was tired. And those things were actually making it worse. It wasn't until I learned to be like Jesus and learned to sleep in the middle of the storm, to not let the water dictate to me, not let the wind dictate to me the level of peace that I was going to live in my own life. Jesus said in his word that he died for my healing and my health. And when I made a decision to release my faith in that, get past all the emotions that try and come your way, because for some of us, that's where we are. I believe what God said, but I'm just mad that this is even happening to me. I don't deserve this. How come these people over here are living like Who Shot John and everything seems to be going well for them, but yet I'm dealing with all this drama? You got to get past all of that and learn to rest. And when I learned to sit back and I learned to rest, I entered into that. Then my faith could get in motion and work. Of course, God cares. God cares about every detail. That's why he gave us his word. Anything that you need is in here. He wrote this love letter to you so that anything that came up against you, you could overcome with the words of your mouth and the words that he spoke over you. Last thing I wanted to point out to you was that if you ever keep reading past this story, you ever wonder what happened when they got over to the other side? Well, they were met with the guy, the man with the unclean spirits. Jesus cast out those spirits. The guy went back home and he publicized, meaning other people got to hear about Jesus. But then after that, Jesus keeps going and he runs into Jairus, raises Jairus' daughter from the dead. Then he runs into the woman of the issue of blood, who bled for 12 years. A story that if you're new to the things of God, I encourage you to read it in Mark 5. If you've been in the things of God, you've heard this story probably 100 times. All these things are waiting on the other side. So when you look at it like that, the storm came to stop Jesus' next level. So I just want to encourage you. You may be going through a great storm, but recognize that you have what it takes. God has already done everything that you need. Just like me, I'm cancer-free today. I'm walking in the health and the healing that there were days I only dreamed about, and now it's my reality. And also remember that just like Jesus had great miracles on the other side of the storm, so do you. Don't get discouraged. Take it as a compliment. Of course, Satan would try and come and stop. Sometimes you feel like you're not moving forward until you see all these attacks coming from Satan. Like, oh, I see you for what you are. You're trying to stop. I don't know what it is, but I know it's good. So God, do you care? Of course you care. Of course he cares. He loves you, and this is not the end. Don't give up. Don't quit. Get to your next level on the other side. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I want to encourage you to subscribe. You can subscribe at michelleferguson.org. Share with a friend. And remember, my name is Michelle Ferguson, and I'm helping you to discover, develop, and celebrate who God created you to be.